Hi guys, Ronnie here and welcome to the workshop. Now, riding off-road or on mixed surfaces on drop bar bikes seems to be all the rage nowadays, and I have to agree. I also have a bike for that, converted from my cross bike, and I really enjoy this type of riding, particularly when I don't want to do a hard training session, which I normally do on my road bike or time trial bike. Riding on mixed surfaces is good fun and a bit more relaxing, and it also helps your bike handling skills. So most people and most brands actually tend to favor gravel bikes nowadays. There are plenty of releases of specific gravel bikes, and there's a good range when you take them, for example, from being very close to an actual road bike to being very close to an actual mountain bike. So, of course, depending on where you live and where you want to ride, you're going to be served by some of those options, somewhere in the middle. Also, there are gravel bikes for touring, for racing specifically. So there are plenty of options. Now, I don't have a dedicated gravel bike, but for racing cross, I do have a very high-end, very sweet cross bike that I otherwise wouldn't really be using in the summer. So I've shown you this previously. I've converted a little bit by essentially changing the wheels, adding some bottle cages to make it sort of a gravel machine. So how does that work? Can you really have two bikes in one, or even three bikes in one? Well, I have to say, yeah, it is quite possible, and it works pretty damn well. So let's look at the bike one more time in a little bit of detail. So this is a Trackboon Race Shop Limited frame set, so high-end cyclocross superbike, ISO speed decoupler front and rear. Now you have to bear in mind that Trek's own gravel bike, the Checkpoint, doesn't have the front ISO speed, just the rear one. And this frame set is much lighter, although it doesn't have nowhere near as much clearance. This is pretty much designed to take a 33mm cross tar plus some mud, and that's pretty much it. But also uses a higher grade 600 OCLV carbon. As for the rest of the build kit, standard cross stuff, SRAM Force 1 group set, 1x of course, with the HRD flat mount calipers, on Traeger Montrose Pro saddle, Trek's on seat mast, XXX bar and stem, super light, super comfy. But where the changes come from and what I've made is previously I've used Zip 303 Firecrest and NSW tubeless wheels as my cross racing wheels. To be honest, these wheels were excellent wheels, very sturdy, reliable, did the job, but they weren't really specific to either of the purposes that I was using them for. And recently I've switched all my bikes to MV wheels, and I decided to switch over with this bike as well. So now I have a dedicated cross racing MVCX tubular wheel set and an MV 4.5 AR disc SES wheel set. So how do these ride, and what are the differences between a cyclocross setup and the gravel setup? Well, in order to be able to have one bike for two purposes, you need to take care of a couple of details that I had to. So obviously, if you're running a disc brake bike, then disc rotors have to be the same. Now, as for the hubs, I prefer to run 6-bolt hubs rather than center lock, because there are shims where you can adjust the position of the rotor, which you can install. With a center lock, you don't have that option. So with 6-bolt, even if you don't have the same hubs, you can still make use of both wheel sets without any adjustments to your gearing or your brake calipers. But I used a bit of foresight when building up my wheel set so both of them have exactly the same hubs, and this way I have pretty much perfect shifting and rotor alignment. Luckily, honestly I didn't expect it to be that simple, but it turned out to be fine. So yeah, it works just like it should. So yeah, typical cyclocross racing wheel set, super light, tubulars, shallow and sturdy. What's the gravel setup like? Now I've already shown you this wheel set with Dusty from the gravel in my previous videos. The tires I use, some of you have been asking, it's a Schwalbe G1 Speed 30mm tubeless tire. Now I chose this tire because, well, true gravel enthusiasts will say that this is super mellow when it comes to gravel tires, and I agree completely. The thing is though, what I mainly use this bike for, and the gravel roads we have here are super fast, super smooth, and the dirt roads are just like that as well, so you can ride them even on the dirt, on road tires. So anything chunkier isn't really necessary, but still I like to keep my aero advantage of the wheel set that I have here, super aero, just 1 watt slower than my regular 4.5s in the Medon. So a 30mm tire fits perfectly flush with a 30mm rim, still gives me the full aero advantage. So that's the reasoning behind that. As I said, not a true gravel grinding chunky stuff tire, but then again in this frame set you can't really fit anything more. Well, the trickier part with these double setups is the gearing. So right now I have a Quark power meter in there. If I'm perfectly honest, if I wasn't riding this bike outside of cross racing and cyclocross courses, I wouldn't really need a power meter, but for general all-around riding, it's well, I don't like to have any rides tracked without power. You can also notice the pedals. Now in the summer I pretty much use this bike, as I said, on mellower stuff. So these are speed play pavés, so they have the body removed a little bit, so even if you step in some mud or dirt, you can still clip in, unlike regular zeros, but these aren't really off-road worthy. So for cross racing, of course, I have to switch to regular mountain bike pedals, which in my case are XTR M9000s. Yeah, so one challenge I had to overcome was the gearing. So previously I had a 40-tooth front chainring on there in my cross setup, and 1136 for general gravel riding, and 1132 for cross racing. And you have to keep in mind that, yeah, for cross you don't really need all that wide of a spread of gears, because on a muddy course you're not going to be even in the 40-11, or very unlikely. And if you were to put on a 40-tooth cassette, well, if you're into that, running is basically faster. So yeah, no major climbs in there anyway. So a tight little 1132 super light red cassette, pretty much the best you can get. And this fits onto standard Shimano 11-speed driver body, so nothing special there. My other wheel set comes, however, with an XD driver body to be able to fit wider range cassettes. Now, perhaps if you talk about reliability, shift quality and all that stuff, a standard SRAM X-Dome cassette will be much better than this. I'm describing this cassette in a separate video, which will be linked below. So this is a Leonardi 9-36, and the main point I wanted to achieve with this cassette is that I can basically have a full-on road setup and the gear range of even a double setup with the same small chainring and short chain length that I use to run my cross wheels on. So this way I have top gear that's taller than 5011, but also a very small gear of 4236, so basically I can climb anything. And of course for cross racing I will be removing the bottle cages, and with these modifications, if we're talking about the weight, so in the gravel setup with the aero wheels, this bike weighs 7.4 kilos with the Wahoo element both and everything, which is super light. I would say many track Amondas are heavier than that without aero wheels, so that's excellent. I'm really happy with that. My Madone weighs 7.2, but since these are tough tubeless tires, I don't really have to take my seat roll with the spares in it. Effectively, this is a lighter bike, so I'm really happy about that. And it becomes even lighter with the 1200 gram tubular wheel set, down to 7.1 if I account for the heavier XTR pedals and removing the bottle cages. So 7 kilos ish. For a cross bike, I think that's excellent, and that really helps when you need to make those big accelerations, the tiny thin legs that I have and the small power output. Okay, so this is the theory. How does it work in practice? As for the gravel part and the road part, mixed terrain part, this is a pretty damn fast bike. I would say it's not more than a kilometer per hour slower, or 1.5 maybe at the same power output compared to my Madone, and that's basically just for my higher stack position. That's probably the biggest difference, and the non-aero frame set, so that's another reason of the increased resistance. When you're just riding on your own, you're not really feeling that. It's still a fast, responsive bike, particularly with these nice little wheels that I have in there currently. The only time I notice that it's relatively slow to my, well, let's be honest, high-end super bike is when I step directly from one to another. Then of course that bike is faster, particularly at higher speeds. At one point I was overtaken on this by a moped, and I chucked the wheel on him, and he was doing 50 km per hour, and I had to work really hard to stay in the draft. On the Madone it's not really an issue, so that's where you can definitely notice it at higher speeds. Other than that, when climbing and descending, this gives you huge confidence. As I said, in practical terms, when not racing, this bike is lighter than the Madone, and also very responsive at the pedals, particularly thanks to the through axles, front and rear. Excellent ride quality, and I have to say I use it even for road rides or roads that are too bad for the Madone, or where I otherwise wouldn't be comfortable or just don't want to ruin my bike over there. With this one, you just pillow yourself on the 30mm tires and you're good to go. So if you're living in an area with bad roads, something like this, a very good option. Now, since this is a cross race bike, you also get relatively low stack and long reach compared to what would be a gravel bike. So if you're from an aggressive road background, road racing, then this position will be much closer than to what you normally ride. So I'm really satisfied with that. One thing that is a bit of a niggle, but as I said, when not racing, not a big deal. I chose 42 centimeter bars because of cross, you have more control with that. On the road, I do find them to be a little bit too wide. But other than that, on the road and on the gravel, very good stability, nice handling, nice cornering, nice comfort, everything you want. Of course, on chunkier terrain, you'll be limited by a tire choice. On the front, there's potential to go bigger. On the rear as well, although the area at the chainstay is a bit more limited. And of course, since this is a thoroughbred cross bike, it goes very well on cross courses, but I've already talked about that. So can you have 2 or even 3 bikes in one? Well, yeah, with clever component choices you definitely can. And of course people say that okay, these are super high-end pieces of equipment, no one can afford that. Well, I'm aware, but still I think with some good research and wisely speccing your components, you can make a bike with one frame set, one group set, one everything with just some different set of wheels and other tweaks. You can have 2 or even 3 bikes in one. If you want to know more about my other bikes, my mountain bike, my time trial bike, road bike, etc., then don't forget to tune into the channel and subscribe. It's all for today, thanks for watching and see you next time.